Hi, this is Mike Troy from the American Revolution podcast. We're here in front of the grave of General Edward Braddock. Now, you may hear some car noises off to the side. That's because we're right by Route 40. General Braddock is responsible for this car noise because he, along with the aid of George Washington and several hundred other British regulars and colonial militia, helped build a road right through this area, trying to create a pathway from Virginia to what became Pittsburgh. The point of this road was to get an army through to claim Pittsburgh, which was at the time the French Fort Duquesne for the British. George Washington had originally taken this path when it was pretty much wilderness in 1753 to tell the French to go away. When they didn't, he came up here with a larger force in 1754 to try to fight off the French. He managed to start the French and Indian War with the massacre at Jumonville Glen, but after that, he had to return home to Virginia. In 1755, General Edward Braddock, who was a British regular, came to Virginia with a much larger force of British soldiers in an attempt to take back the fort in force. General's men widened the road that had been started by George Washington because he had to get much larger wagons through the wilderness. Before they reached Fort Duquesne, about in this area, Braddock's army was ambushed by French and Indian soldiers. The French and Indians caught the British pretty much by surprise and were much more skilled in wilderness warfare. The result was a casualty rate of far more than 50% of the British soldiers. Many of the British officers were killed. Washington, despite being noted for his bravery in the battle, was not even scratched, although he did have several holes through his uniform. General Braddock was mortally wounded on the battlefield. He survived for several days before finally expiring from his wounds. Washington and the other officers decided to bury Braddock in the middle of Braddock's road and then march the entire army over his grave as a way of hiding it from the Indians so that it would not be dug up and desecrated. Many years later, in 1804, about a half century later, this road was being made into the National Road, which was supposed to be a route from Virginia into the Ohio territories. During the beginnings of that effort, they managed to dig up a body that had been buried in the road and is presumed to be General Braddock's. It was moved a few feet away and built and buried under this monument. The monument was actually constructed even many years later in 1913, but supposedly beneath it lays the grave of Edward Braddock, who died hoping to keep this territory as part of Britain. If you'd like to learn more about this or other things in American history, please subscribe for free to the American Revolution podcast, available on YouTube or wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Thanks again. I'm Mike Troy. Thank you for joining me on the American Revolution podcast.